Hey guys, this is Candle, and welcome to the new year. So I hope it's treating you guys really well. It's been going all right for me so far. Not perfect, I would say. I mean, I do have a bit of a sore throat right now, but I figured since it's been a while since the last video, it's time for another collection update. I don't have that big of a stack of actual like physical media here right now, but there was this Steam sale that just happened. So let's go ahead and get started, shall we? First up is, if I can actually hold it correctly, there we go. We got Dishonored 2, the limited edition for PC. Basically, it's pretty much just like Dishonored 1, except you have the choice of playing as either Corvo Attano, the main character from the previous game, or his daughter, Emily Kaldwin, who is also an Empress. They never really made it straightforward and upfront in the first game that Emily was his daughter, but you always kind of got that sense of it. But yeah, the only bad thing I can really say about this game is you don't get to flip between them. It's one or the other. You choose right at the beginning of the game whether you're going to play as Emily or Corvo, and that's it. The other one is encased in stone for the rest of the game, and your entire task changes a little bit based on which character you play. As Emily, you are tasked with going and destroying the conspiracy of the people trying to usurp your throne to try to save your father. As Corvo, it's a little bit different. You're tasked with going and destroying the conspiracy that is usurping your daughter's throne and saving her. So, yeah, a little bit different. Not too much, though. I mean, you do go through the exact same levels as both characters. It's really kind of interesting, and if you hadn't played the DLC packs from Dishonored 1, you might be going into it wondering who the hell are some of these people. But had you actually played the DLC packs, you would have gone into it wondering why the hell are these people around? They don't actually explain it until much later on exactly what's going on, because the main villain of this game is a gal by the name of Delilah Copperspoon. Yes, Delilah Copperspoon is her name, and she is claiming to be the half sister of the late Empress Jessamine Caldwin, who is Emily's mother and Corvo's lover. Not exactly wife. They were never properly married. He is actually her bodyguard and so on. But she dies at the beginning of Dishonored 1. So, anyways, Delilah comes in. She's got all these special powers, not necessarily granted to her by the Outsider, which is the mystical figure that grants Corvo and Emily their powers and so on. But anyways, it's a wonderful game filled with a whole bunch of stealthy sneaking and stuff like that. It's a really a great game. If you haven't played it, you really should. So the next game I'm going to talk about is a game I once upon a time thought would never actually come out. It is one of 5 games I actually bought my PS3 for, and now it's actually out on PS4. It is, of course, The Last Guardian. Yes, this game, which for the longest time was vaporware, for the longest time people thought was being canceled or was just never playing coming out. Originally announced in 2007, it is the 3rd game from Team Ico, the people who brought us, obviously, Ico, and also Shadow of the Colossus. Now, this game, I have not actually put all that much time into it. Maybe half an hour to an hour. I really need to get back into it, but there's a little bit of something that's keeping me from doing that. It's because of the way the main character moves. How should I put this? The main character is 10, 11-year-old boy, and he moves about as awkwardly as you would expect a 10 or 11-year-old boy to move if he had been paralyzed all his life and had just learned how to walk. Yeah, he controls very, very awkwardly. Whenever you even just nudge the left stick in any direction, he just races off that way, and it's this huge, ungainly gait, and it's takes him forever to stop. You tell him to do one thing, he does another. It's just really huge and really, really annoying. And I will eventually force my way through the game, just haven't yet because of other things going on. But I will eventually force my way through it. One thing I will say, though, is the animations and the AI for Trico, or Trico, as they say in the game, the bird, cat, dog thing here, is phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. It acts exactly like a real animal would, which could also be a bad thing, but at least in terms of gameplay. But it's still a beautiful, beautiful game, And I've heard that the biggest reason why it didn't come out on PS3 was they couldn't get the frame rate right. Now, normally, most games nowadays have kind of a minimum frame rate of 30. The ideal is typically 60 or higher, considering most TVs and monitors still are 60 hertz. So you kind of want to get a frame rate about what the actual monitor or TV can do. And unfortunately, it looked like on the PS3, the best they could do was 15, which is just slightly higher than the absolute minimum the human eye needs to recognize motion, which I believe is about 12 frames a second, if I'm remembering my animation classes correctly. And that's actually what like old school silent footage was shot at, which is why a lot of times you see when you watch that kind of stuff back, it's either really janky and jittery or it's sped up because they want to make the motion smoother, so it's sped up to more of a normal frame rate, which for movies is about 24 frames a second. But anyways, for Last Guardian, they could only hit 30, or they could only hit 15 frames a second when their target was actually 30. So anytime they'd shown it, it was always like pre-recorded footage that they had gone and just doubled the frame rate for. They had just sped it up. So finally, this game actually does seem to run at 30 frames. So the next game I'm going to talk about is another game I thought would almost never come out, and is also another reason why I bought my PS3, despite the fact that it's now on PS4. Also on Xbox One. It is, you can't see it because of the glare from the window, it is Final Fantasy 15. This is the Deluxe Edition. I wanted the Ultimate Collector's Edition, but I couldn't afford it considering it was over $250. But either way, the Deluxe Edition is really nice. Different cover art, which is from the guy who did a lot of the character and monster designs for the early Final Fantasy games. I can't remember his name anymore. But if you can actually open this up, it's a steelbook case, which is always really nice. But if you actually open this up, you can see like the whole image here, and it's a really, really beautiful piece of art. And actually, the original cover art is on the manual right there. That's what that looks like. So this is Final Fantasy 15, which had a long and storied development history. It was stuck in development hell for the longest time. It was originally announced in 2006, believe it or not. So it's been 10 years since this game was announced. In 2006, as part of the Fabula Nova Crystallis project, which was a trio of Final Fantasy games which would share common themes and a shared universe and stuff like that. And by and large, the only one of those to come out the way it was originally intended was Final Fantasy 13, which in itself got 2 more sequels. I still have yet to actually play through Lightning Returns, unfortunately. It's the whole time limit thing. But anyways, for the other 2 games, you had Final Fantasy Agido 13, which eventually came out in Japan on the PSP as Type 0, and a little bit later here in the States as Type 0 HD. And then there was the long in development Versus 13, which had to take quite a bit of a turn when it switched from the PS3 to the PS4. Okay, so when it went from the PS3 to the PS4, they realized, well, first off, the reason why they did that was they realized that the PS3 just did not have the kind of power for what they wanted to do, which was this huge, seamless open world environment, which for the most part it really is. You don't really get to go inside that many buildings, but it is this huge open world environment, and the only times I ever saw loading screens in it was when traveling extremely long distances via the car. When traveling from one end of the map to the other, the car was moving at a faster speed, and so the game couldn't quite load up properly. I don't know why that was so hard for me to say, which is why there's so many jump cuts in there, but there it is. Anyways, this game is a huge, huge blast to play. It's beautiful mechanically. The battle system is absolutely amazing. It seems like it's extremely simple in the fact that there's one button to attack, you just hold it down to attack. One button to dodge, you just hold that down to dodge. But the real trickery is in figuring out when to attack, when to dodge, and also the fact that using the D-pad, you can switch between 4 different sets of weapons, including magic. Magic is a little bit different here. You can create your own spells by combining 3 elements plus an extra item or so. And basically what they do is they act kind of as bombs. You can just tap the attack button once it's selected to toss it out, or you can hold that button down and actually aim where it goes, and then it's an area of effect type thing. It's really, really kind of cool. But again, it's extreme, huge flexibility in the battle system. You do only control one character, the main character Noctis. You do only control him, but you have three other party members, which are there for the most part. You've got Prompto, who is Noctis's best friend, kind of a shutterbug, and kind of just the normal one of the bunch. He's not royalty. He's not really part of that lifestyle or anything. And you also have Gladio, or Gladiolus, who is Noctis's bodyguard. And then you have Ignis, who is kind of a hybrid between butler, a chef, and a tutor. But he's basically the smart one of the bunch. And each of them has their own different styles and so on. Prompto uses guns and big armaments, like actual like traditional weaponry. Like he's got crossbows and blasters and stuff like that. Well, you know what I mean. Gladio uses these big hulking swords and also shields, which befits him as kind of part of the Crown's Guard and kind of being the prince's personal bodyguard. And then Ignis uses pole arms and also daggers, which is really weird, but I guess long range versus short range. And Noctis can use pretty much any of them, but again, he is only restricted to having 4 items equipped at once, so you kind of have to pick and choose which ones you want. I typically kept with a normal sword, a halberd or a lance, a polearm of some kind, a big hulking greatsword, and usually a spell or one of the royal armaments, which are these special weapons that when you use them, they drain your health a bit, but they are super, super powerful. Anyways, the mechanics of the game are actually wonderful. I had a crazy amount of fun time wandering around this world, completing side quests, hunting monsters, doing stuff like that. Probably spent about 30-40 hours doing that, just having a hell of a time. And then I decided to tackle the rest of the story. Now, for those of you who don't know, Final Fantasy 15 starts out in this huge open world environment, but the last half of the game, when you kind of go on a world tour of the rest of the world, instead of just this one country, it's a lot more linear. You just kind of just go from place to place to place. You get to explore one of the first places you go to, a city called Altissia. You get to explore that a bit, but it doesn't really tell you that you can. So if you're not paying attention, you could just end up out of there immediately. And you, as far as I know, you can't go back. Maybe you can later on, like after you've completed the game or whatever, and you can go back to the main open world, but I'm not entirely sure. I really hope that you can, because there's some really cool things there that I didn't get a chance to do. Like there's this mini game there that I didn't get a chance to play. But I was kind of tired of the game at that point a little bit. I kind of just wanted to get the story over with. I'd been playing it for a month, ended up putting 50 hours into it. It was a hell of a time. But unfortunately, the story kind of falls apart, or rather it's that it wasn't really ever there so much, and now that all you're doing is story missions, you kind of just don't really feel the story that much. The story basically revolves around, okay, you are the crown prince of a kingdom called Lucius. There's also an empire called Niflheim. You've been at war for 30 years. You've recently called a ceasefire to sign a treaty. Part of the treaty says that you have to marry the Lady Lunafreya, who is a princess of a former nation, which is now a protectorate of the empire. You have to marry her, so you're kind of off on your bachelor party road trip when that happens, and then the event of Kingsglaive happens, which is this pretty amazing CG movie that is so beautifully done that it only hit the uncanny valley a few times. Other times it was almost indistinguishable from real life. It's actually included in the deluxe edition, which is one of the reasons why I got it. So I got to watch that, and it fills in some of the blanks of what's going on towards the beginning of the story. But anyways, basically the Empire kills the king, kills your father. Lunafreya is kind of off trying to fix things as she can, and you are still trying to find your way to Altissia, and eventually to the Empire because you have to bring back the crystal because light is fading from the world. It's all going extremely dark. Nights are getting longer, and that's when the demons come out. So eventually, the world will be left without any kind of sunlight at all, and it'll just be a world of demons. And it really kind of falls apart at that point in the story, especially since you fight your way through this really, really long, drawn out dungeon, basically, that you are alone for yourself for the most parts, and you cannot really do most of your normal attacks or anything for the most part. All of your magic is kind of stripped away from you. You can't summon your weapons, you can't really do much of anything for the most part, and it's really annoying, and it's really long and drawn out. And then at the end of it, you fight the big baddie, and you realize exactly who he is, why he's the big baddie, and it doesn't quite jive with his earlier actions because he's kind of helped you out a bit earlier in the game, and it just doesn't make sense. And then all of a sudden you get sucked into the crystal, and the next thing you know, it's 10 years later, you're stranded on an island, except your boat is there. There's nobody else on the island, so how'd your boat get there? How'd you get there? You've got a beard now, so you've aged the 10 years that you've been missing. But what exactly has happened? Have you just been in stasis? Have you been in solitude? It doesn't get explained really well. And you go out, you gather up your friends who have kind of gone off and done their own thing for the last 10 years, fighting alone. One of whom is actually blind now, but it doesn't really seem to matter because, again, there's no light in the world, so it's all incredibly dark. Despite the fact there are actual, like, man-made lights, there's just no natural light. And then you go back to home to fight the big baddie and end the game. And it's really weird, and it just kind of falls apart. Really, I think the high points of the Final Fantasy series in terms of storytelling have been... 4 was where it really started to shine in terms of storytelling, but really, I think the real high points were 6, 9, and 10. And after 10, it kind of just dropped off a bit. I mean, you had the MMO, then you had 12, which is actually pretty damn good. And then, of course, 13, and then another MMO, and now 15. So here's hoping they do better with 16. So anyways, that's actually it for the physical games. But there was a Steam sale recently, and I did pick up some items from that, so I'll see you guys on the flip side. Alright, so here we are. I'm trying something a little bit new with Facecam, so hello! Anyways, back to all this. So I did pick up a few new things for the Oculus Rift. It's mostly free. I don't have Oculus Touch right now, so I don't really want to go too in-depth with actually buying a whole bunch of stuff on here because I'm not entirely sure I can play all of it. So anyways, mostly what I got was Casino VR Poker. Haven't actually played this yet because I was having trouble with my controller working. But it's basically pretty much exactly what it says. It's poker in VR. So not much else to that. Mountain Goat Mountain. Haven't played that yet either. Again, it was also free. That one is kind of... It reminds me a lot of... Based on what I've seen of it, it reminds me a lot of a game called Catherine where you're climbing different blocks or cubes or whatever to try to reach the top. It's also kind of similar to Qbert in that respect. And then last here we have Hero Bound Spirit Champion, which again I have not yet played. Becoming a theme here. I haven't played this yet. It's also free, but it seems to be a kind of a third-person action game. The only other 3 new things on here are all short story type, vignette type videos that I have not played yet, or watched yet rather. I have Alumet Penrose, Gary the Gull, and Senza Peso, a mini opera. Everything else here is kind of what you're already used to. Even if I go to not installed, I don't think there's really anything new here either. Alright, so that is it for Oculus. Next up is Uplay, which, well, they had this kind of thing this past year where it was their 30th anniversary, so during the latter half of the year, they were giving away free games every month, and at the end of it, you were able to collect them all kind of together. So, some of these I already have on other systems that I've already played, such as Assassin's Creed 3, which I did a Let's Play of, Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon, which I played on 360, and Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, which I played on the original Xbox. Other games I already have would be Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell. I also have an Xbox. I have not actually played through that yet. And I'd never had it until now, but I did watch a Let's Play, so I kind of consider it as beaten. Rayman Origins. The only other one on here that I have not yet played or experienced at all, really, is The Crew, which is kind of a racing game. So I'm kind of excited to eventually play that. Eventually. But for right now, that is it, and let's go on to Steam. Yes, a bunch of new stuff on here. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. 6180 The Moon, kind of a lightning round here because this video is already running really long. But 6180 The Moon is kind of a platforming game where you play as the moon. And it affects gravity, where actually it's more the top and the bottom of the screen wrap around each other. And jumping up to the top of the screen lets you come up from the bottom of the screen. So it's kind of this weird platformer in that respect. Then we have Abzu, which is a beautiful, beautiful short game. It's really only a couple hours long, but if you've played Journey, it's a lot like that. It's basically Journey, except it's underwater, and it's beautiful, beautifully done. Next up, we have Aura, Fate of the Ages, which is a classic point-and-click adventure game. I believe it's in first person, but I'm not entirely sure. But having always loved games like Myst and so on, this has been sitting on my wish list for quite a while, and now I finally have it. Have not actually played it yet, though. Next up, we have Cluster Truck, which is an amazing name for the game. This is kind of a Twitch Reflex style game where you're hopping from top of one semi-truck to another to try to navigate the map and overcome obstacles and so on. And basically what it is an advanced game of The Floor is Lava, if you've ever played that as a kid, where you're trying to get from one end of the room to the other without actually touching the floor, and that's basically what it is. Then we have John Romero's often forgotten, probably for a good reason, Daikatana, which I have yet to actually play. See, here's the thing. It's kind of a tradition for me at this point. This would probably be my third year running. That kind of at the end of the year, beginning of the year, and so on, kind of through the winter, I play a whole bunch of classic shooters. Last year it was Wolfenstein and the Hexen and Heretic games and a few others. This year it's going to be Daikatana and a few others as well. I also got Deadly Premonition, the director's cut for PC. It was only like $1, so that's why I picked it up. Really, really quirky game. I played it on the original, not the original, but on the Xbox 360, and it's this weird game. It's really got this Twin Peaks vibe to it, definitely. Next up, what do we have? What else is new here? There we go. Fahrenheit Indigo Prophecy Remastered. This is a game when it originally came out. It was known as Fahrenheit throughout the world, but Indigo Prophecy in the US. I'm not entirely sure why. This is one of David Cage's early games before he did Heavy Rain and Beyond Two Souls. And it got remastered for PC, and I've yet to actually touch it, but I've already beaten the game, so it's more just to add to my collection than anything else. Next up are the PC versions for Final Fantasy III and Final Fantasy IV. These are ports from the DS version. Actually, I believe Final Fantasy III is the port from the DS to the mobile to PC, which they ported a lot of their mobile versions to PC for some idiotic reason. But the Final Fantasy IV is a port from the DS version, and it's actually the 30th anniversary of Final Fantasy this year. I was originally planning on playing through each of the main series games, single-player ones, not the MMOs, but each of the main single-player campaign or single-player games. I was planning on doing that as kind of a year-long thing for Let's Plays, but then I kind of fell out of Let's Plays about halfway through recording that and Tomb Raider 3. I just kind of really, really got tired of doing Let's Plays, so that's why my channel has kind of been a bit dead recently. But it's good to have those on PC now, especially considering I've never actually beaten either of these games. So I might eventually do that, finally. Let's see, next up is, I'm not sure if I ever actually mentioned this before, but I have Guns of Icarus online now. I haven't actually played it yet. Turns out one of my cousins had an extra key lying around, so he just sent it to me one day. And I really thank him for that. Thanks, Zach. You know who you are. He's actually in the Navy right now, so good for him. Let's see, what else? Yes. I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. This is another classic point-and-click adventure game. I believe it's actually third-person, though, not first-person. And it's really, really quirky one. It's kind of sci-fi horror, I believe. Maybe a little bit of cyberpunk in there. But I haven't played it yet, and it's been sitting on my wish list for a good long while, which is why I finally got it. And actually, actually every single one of the games I got on the Steam sale this past week were on my wish list, which is now down to 100 titles, which is awesome, considering a few short months ago it was pushing 300, and I really, really trimmed it down, getting rid of the stuff that I knew I would probably never actually get. Anyways, next up is Inside, which is the follow-up game to Limbo. It's kind of the same vibe, not quite monochromatic, but very similar. I've yet to actually play this. It's supposed to only be a few hours long, so I might actually do that later today. So this is supposed to be a really, really good game, and I'm really excited to play it. Next up is Commander Keen in Keen Dreams, kind of the lost episode of the Commander Keen games. I'm not even sure if this was actually properly developed by id or if somebody else took it over, but it plays really a lot like 4 and 5, which means I'm actually not going to be able to actually beat the thing myself. I'm going to have to watch a Let's Play in order to do it. I just, it's that kind of precision platformer that I am just so trash at doing. So next up is a visual novel called Long Live the Queen, which tasks you as kind of a princess who is becoming queen to evolve your studies and not get killed and stuff like that. Again, it's been on my wish list for a while. It's kind of a weird game. I haven't played it yet, though, so I can't really talk too much about it. Then we have The Longest Journey, which is another point-and-click adventure game. It's one of the early 3D ones, I believe, so it's polygonal 3D. Might still be pre-rendered backgrounds, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm fairly certain it is polygonal 3D. Now, this game is the first in a trio of games that is more commonly known as Dreamfall, because the first one is The Longest Journey, the second one is Dreamfall: The Longest Journey, and then the third one is Dreamfall Chapters, which is a lot more recent. I believe is more episodic than anything else. I don't know how either of those play, so I figured I may as well at least start with the first one. So next up, let's see, what else do we have? Yes, we have Reigns, which is, I believe, originally a mobile game. It definitely plays like it could be. You've basically got a deck of cards, and on each card is somebody who's telling you something that's happening to your kingdom. Certain specific scenarios. Some of them are really wacky. Like there's a dog you can follow that can lead you to a whole bunch of weird shit. There's a dungeon. There's the devil. There's a whole bunch of weird stuff. But the object of the game is to basically, each of these 4 icons at the top of the title here is one of your resources. You have faith, you have the army, you have the populace, and then you have money. And basically the objective is to try to keep each of those in the middle to last as long as you can. And how you do this is every time there's a card face up, you either pull it to the left to say yes or pull it to the right to say no, and each card affects those 4 stats. It's really, really weird game. It's very quick to play. You die very easily in it. But again, it also continues on after that. So next up is the Resident Evil HD Remaster. This is the port / HD remaster of the GameCube remake of the original Resident Evil game, which I previously owned but no longer currently have, but will eventually get again sometime in the future. But anyways, Resident Evil 7 is coming out towards the end of this month, and I'm actually super excited for that. But I'd never actually really gotten into the Resident Evil games before. I tried 4, I just never got into it because the fact that you have to stand still while you aim, I don't like that. And previously I tried the GameCube remake as well as of Resident Evil 1, as well as the PS2 port of Code Veronica X, and I didn't like how the way you handled the character, how tanky it felt. The fact that the character movement is character relative, like actually pushing up on the stick or D-pad or whatever moves the character forward, pushing right turns him right, pushing left turns him left, and so on, while the camera position is fixed. So you end up in this weird thing where you're pushing up on the control stick to move your character forward, but he's actually coming towards you down to the bottom of the screen, and it's this weird disconnect I don't like. See, Silent Hill, I was able to force my way through that kind of thing for Silent Hill 1. Silent Hill 2 and 3 gave you the option to change it to where it was camera relative rather than character relative, where even though you still mostly had these fixed camera positions, pushing up moves the character to the top of the screen rather than to the bottom. So it was a lot easier for me to handle. But as much as I've never really gotten into the Resident Evil games, I've always enjoyed the movies, and I'm really looking forward to the last one of those coming out soon. And I'm really hoping that Resident Evil 7 is going to be good as well. So next up is another classic shooter, Shadow Warrior Classic Redux. Now, the original release of this game is available for free on Steam. However, Classic Redux is a lot like the Megaton Edition or the newer, what is it, the World Tour Edition of Duke Nukem 3D, where basically they went ahead and remastered it so it's running on modern PCs at modern resolutions, and everything looks a hell of a lot better. And I believe it actually includes all the expansions as well as the original classic version. I've just barely started it, but it's basically that kind of game. And in fact, it's made by 3D Realms, who are the same people who did the early Duke Nukem games up to Duke Nukem 3D until Duke Nukem Forever pretty much killed them. Let's see. Ooh, I almost forgot that I actually got this one. Sword and Sorcery EP. Yeah, Super Brothers Sword and Sorcery. This is another port of a mobile game that I have been looking forward to playing for a really long time. I just hadn't really gotten around to it, and I haven't gotten around to playing it yet either. But it's still really supposed to be good, so I'm looking forward to it. And then the last one, which is hidden by my camera. Let's see if I can change that on the fly here. Let's see, move to top. There we go. There we go. All right. The last one is right here down at the bottom, or since my camera is mirrored, oh wait, no, I see what it is. All right, you're looking at the monitor view as if I'm looking at it, whereas you're looking at me as if you were actually looking at me. So it's actually like more down, like right down here at the bottom is The Witness, which is Jonathan Blow's new game. Those of you who don't know who he is, he's the guy who made Braid. And as I've seen other people call it, I will say as well, The Witness is probably the best game you should never play. And the reason for that, at least in my opinion, is because it's a game where, much like Myst, you wander around a deserted island solving puzzles. Unlike Myst, however, there are not as many clues to how the puzzles go, and there are a lot more of them, and they all come in one specific variety. They are line puzzles. You've got to figure out how to get from the origin point to the end point. You've got obstacles in the way, and there are the weird mechanics of how the lines have to go and so on. And there's like 200 to 600 of them. I'm not sure the entire number, but they get really frustrating really quickly. I had to open up a guide and have the solutions in front of me in order to finish this thing. So it's just this really weird, quirky game. It's beautiful though, and it runs like a charm. But that is just really, really weird game. So that, I believe, is it. I don't think I have anything else here. Yeah. Yep, that's it. So that's it until my next Gaming Pickups video. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Please remember to comment, rate, and subscribe.